Welcome back, everyone. It's now my pleasure to introduce Steve Lund, the managing partner for Deloitte in New Brunswick and PEI, and also the chair of the board of the Atlantic Provinces Chamber of Commerce, to introduce our last keynote speaker of the day. But before I turn the microphone over to Steve, just a reminder that if you have questions you would like to pose to our next speaker, who, in case you haven't heard, is Frank McKenna, please submit them using the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to as many questions as we can following our little fireside chat. So Steve, it's over to you.
Thanks, John, and good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations on a great session, 121 attendees right now. Super important to get everyone together in the Moncton business community. So congratulations on a great session. It's now my honor to introduce the great Frank McKenna. So Frank has been one of Canada's most respected political and business leaders. He's been active as an executive with TD Bank Group since 2006 and joined TD Securities in January 2020. As deputy chair, he's focused on supporting the continued expansion of TD Securities' global footprint. He's a graduate of St. FX, Queen's University, and the UNB Law School. He was awarded a prestigious Lord Beaverbrook Scholarship in Law and has practiced in courtrooms all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada. He achieved widespread acclaim for his successful defense of Canadian boxing legend Yvon Durel. He was elected Premier of New Brunswick in 1987 in a historic victory that left him with all 58 seats in the Legislative Assembly. Son mandat en tant que Premier ministre a été marqué par une large reconnaissance pour l'équilibre budgétaire et la création d'emplois. Il a été le seul politicien de l'histoire du Canada à être nommé développeur économique de l'année, en plus d'être intronisé au temple de la renommée de la technologie canadienne. He retired 10 years ago to the day of his original election, keeping his promise to the people of New Brunswick that he would only serve 10 years. Since leaving public life, he was in widespread demand as a corporate director and acted as counsel to 2 national law firms. He was named by Prime Minister Jean Chrétien to the Security Intelligence Review Committee. He was also inducted into the New Brunswick Business Hall of Fame and the Canadian Business Hall of Fame. In 2005, he accepted an invitation from Prime Minister Paul Martin to become Canadian Ambassador to the United States of America. Upon completing his time as ambassador, he resumed his corporate career with TD Bank Group, one of North America's largest banks. Il est également devenu président du conseil d'administration de Brookfield Asset Management, une firme de gestion d'actifs mondiale dotée d'un actif de 500 milliards de dollars. De plus, il est devenu un des administrateurs du Canadian Natural Resources, le plus grand producteur de pétrole et de gaz au Canada. Mr. McKenna has a School of Public Policy named in his honor at St. Thomas University and the Frank McKenna Leadership Center at St. FX. Also bearing his name are the Frank McKenna School of Philosophy, Politics, and Economics at Mount A and Frank McKenna Leadership Center at l'Université de Moncton. His charitable work, particularly in Haiti, was rewarded with the Red Cross Humanitarian of the Year Award. Mr. McKenna is a Queen's Council member of the Queen's Privy Council, a fellow of the Institute of Corporate Directors, a member of the Order of New Brunswick, and a member of the Order of Canada. He is a recipient of 15 honorary degrees. He and his wife, Julie, have 3 grown children. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcome Frank McKenna.
Hello, everybody. I guess the first question I should ask you is, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Nice to be here. And look, thank you for an extraordinary introduction. I've got to cut that introduction back. That's really you'd have to read. But thank you for that, and thank you to the inspired people who have put this conference on. I think it's a terrific idea, and I've been listening now for the last several hours, and you've had some extraordinary people speaking to you today, and I just note in particular, listen to David Campbell. David Campbell, I've always had a lot of respect for. He used to work for me when I was Premier, and he's a great asset. And as for the Honourable Melanie Joly, she's just the best minister of economic development that we've had in the country. She's just a real spitfire and takes a real keen interest in regional development and has been a great asset to us in our region. So you're very, very lucky to have her on your call as well. So at the end of the day, I think I am, like Michelle Duffy said, I'm going to be the bend in the road here. So take your best shot at me and let's get at it.
Okay, Frank, thanks very much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And it's a great way to cap off the Recovery Road Summit. So let's get into these fireside chat questions. First one, Frank, is we're almost 1 year now into the pandemic. How do you think overall New Brunswick and Atlantic Canada has handled the challenges of COVID-19?
You know, it is just about a year ago. I was down with Julie in Florida. We were watching a game or two of spring baseball at Dunedin, the Blue Jays, and within one day, our whole world was upset, and we had to cancel baseball, jump in a plane, get back home, and have been ever since. And one thing that was very obvious, I guess, is that there's no playbook for this. For our leaders, there's absolutely no place they can look for guidance. We've talked for months about bending the curve, and we've talked about viral load, and we've talked about antibodies and what therapeutics work, and social distancing, and community transmission. This is our lexicon. This is our cocktail chatter at the present time. What vaccine is working, and how many months between dosages, and what's its efficacy rate. Most people never even heard the word efficacy up until the pandemic hit. Now we're using it all the time. So all to say that we've got this whole strange biblical plague afflicting us, and our leaders have had to respond to it. And to cut to the chase, I think our leaders have done a good job of managing a very difficult, almost unmanageable situation. I think our leadership has been good, and I think our followership has been good. I'm very proud in Atlantic Canada of how respectful people have been of the safety of their families and of others. And as a result, we enjoy an enviable position in the world.
That's a great term, followership. I don't know if I've heard that before, but really we have learned to be great followers over the last 12 months. As you mentioned, Frank, there's no playbook for navigating a pandemic like this. But if you look into your crystal ball, how long do you think it might take before the Canadian and New Brunswick economy has recovered?
I think we're on our way now. I'm really quite optimistic about the direction that we're going in. Just this week in Canada, there are going to be 640,000 vaccines delivered, and they'll be going to the higher of the risk population, which makes us all safer. Throughout the month of March, there'll be 4 million vaccines delivered. And again, this is going to dramatically reduce the workplace for the virus to work. And so I think all of that's good. We also have seasonal attributes which slow the pandemic down as we get towards summer. So I think we've got everything going for us right now, as well as the discipline that people are exhibiting. So with that in mind, my view is that by summer, we'll see significant change in our liberties, if you like. I believe that we'll have restored an Atlantic bubble at a very minimum. I believe that lockdowns will be largely behind us. I'm hoping that subject to testing, there'll be more and more travel allowed in and out of our region. I think that as we get into the fall, and we'll continue to have social distancing and masking as part of our life, and perhaps even in 2021. The problem is not going to be places like New Brunswick, Atlantic Canada, but when you try to get into an elevator in Toronto with 50 stories, that's a challenge. Or when you get into a crowded subway car, that's going to be a challenge. That challenge will be around longer, but I think that we're going to be enjoying a modicum of normal life starting this summer and improving as we get into the fall.
Great. We did hear from Minister Joly earlier today about some of the programs the government has put in place so far and some of the things yet to come. What do you think is most needed looking ahead to 2021 from government to help the private sector rebound?
Yeah, well, let's start with the macro level. What we need is continued stimulus in the economy. And so we're getting that central banks are keeping interest rates low, and low interest rates, it's almost like liquid napalm for an economy. It certainly is for the equity markets. So we're not only seeing record low interest rates, but we're seeing strong commitments from central bankers that will continue even past their normal inflation guide, which means that we have some confidence going out several years that we're going to have low interest rates. That's extraordinarily important. Then we're seeing very large stimulus packages in the United States, 1.9 trillion, in Canada in the vicinity of $100 billion, all of which is going to provide further stimulus to the economy and continue to help boost the economy as we come out of this. Because we shouldn't be misled. This is a 10-speed economic recovery. If you're in the equity markets now, you're just saying, "Wow, this is like catnip to cats. This is really exciting," and it is. But that's not the only economy out there. A lot of manufacturers are doing very, very well. A lot of industries are doing the best ever, but a lot of industries are suffering and suffering badly. And so we need to figure out how we can do the right things to keep everybody coming along. And so that's going to take more. So I've mentioned those programs, interest rates and so on. But in addition, we've got other tools in the tool chest. EDC, BDC have been vigorous players in the economy, help provide a badly needed credit support. And ACOA. ACOA's done yeoman's service. It's led by Francis McGuire, very entrepreneurial deputy minister. And it's had wave after wave of funding. And it knows small business across Atlantic Canada, and it knows what it needs. So I think continued support from ACOA is also a critical element as we go forward. But we are making progress. Governments have had our back. And now what I think they need to do is to figure out how to be more surgical, not use shockwaves of money that we have to repay someday, but to be very surgical and try to figure out exactly where money is needed.
Mm-hmm. We too at the Chamber have heard how responsive ACOA has been, especially with the triple RRF fund and trying to fill in those gaps that maybe some of the other programs didn't hit. So kudos to ACOA. So that's the government side. What about on the private sector side? What should business owners see as their biggest priority looking ahead?
Well, I think we have to use this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reset. And Tiff Macklin, our Bank of Canada governor, spoke today about what he thinks the most urgent needs are in the Canadian economy. And he talked about digitization and automation. And I'm a passionate believer that we have got to race in that direction as quickly as possible. And in fact, I'm devoting a lot of my effort now in New Brunswick on trying to develop a major program of digitalization across the spectrum to make the quality of life better in New Brunswick and to improve the economy of New Brunswick. So each industry has to look at that in their own context, but they have to look at how they can use the most modern tools, how they can design the most modern website, how they can use digital tools for assessing their market and for reaching their market. So we need the New Brunswick economy to do all of that and automate as well, so that we're producing goods at the lowest cost and the highest quality on the planet. If we do that, we'll always be safe. You know, Tom Friedman once went to Taiwan. He said, "You're the luckiest people on the planet because you don't have any natural resources." Who would think? You have to use your brains. You have to use your ingenuity. You have to use automation. And sure enough, you end up with the most efficient industries. So we need, in my view, we need all of those things. And all of those will make a difference. And one other thing that we don't remark on enough, let's not leave people behind. there's a recent study saying that of 10 million factory jobs in the United States, only 5,000 that are gone, only 5 million of them will come back. The other 5 will go to robots and automation. Well, that's true. And that is something we can't stop. We're not Luddites. We cannot stop that kind of progress, but we can retrain people. It's no fault of their own that people are underskilled, undertrained, and maybe even undermotivated. That needs individual care and attention. We need to make sure nobody's left behind, and try to find work and challenge for all of the workers in our economy.
That's a great point about our own brain power and ingenuity being our greatest natural resource, and sometimes we don't think of it that way. So we've heard a lot today, Frank, from entrepreneurs in the restaurant sector, retail, tourism and hospitality. We talked about airports. These sectors have definitely been among the hardest hit. Where do you think we can best help these hardest hit sectors?
Yeah, this frustrates me a lot because I've been involved for the last several years on the Tourism Advisory Council nationally, and it's just heartbreaking to watch. There are small things that can be done. Parks could be open, perhaps free passes to parks across the country as inducements to travel. We could do that. I thought New Brunswick had an imaginative program. Yenna Hurley, by the way, who's the Deputy Minister of Tourism, she's just a breath of fresh air, and she's creative and dynamic, and came up with this idea of a kind of a chit for travel, so that people would be induced to travel and visit various New Brunswick attractions. I like that a lot. I think the heavy lifting here is going to have to be ACOA. Probably they know that sector well, and they know what's going to keep them alive until we can get to a better day. Some jurisdictions around the world have given vouchers, let's say $200, $300, $400 vouchers that every citizen gets to spend on a local food establishment or hospitality establishment of one kind or another. That could certainly induce a lot of activity as soon as the state of the pandemic permits us to get out again. So at the right moment, I think we could introduce a lot of demand. I think our own personal behavior, and people that I know all practice this, we need to support our local restaurants, our local taverns, our local hotels, and so on, and give them our love and show them support in a tangible way by frequenting those premises. So I think all of those would make a difference. I still think there are some old-fashioned programs that work. I recall one from the Harper years, a retrofit program where governments would provide a grant to an employer, and the employer would come up with some equity or a loan for the rest of it to do a major retrofit of premises, and that could result in energy proofing and provide a valuable savings stream as a result of the savings from the energy retrofit. But you could induce a lot of activity by doing that. You would also, ironically, end up getting more tax receipts as a result of it, because people would have to produce an actual receipt for the work in order to get their rebate from the government. But you would also upgrade premises at a time when there may not be a lot of activity internally. You would be able to upgrade premises to be ready for the flood that will take place afterwards. So there's smarter people listening today with better ideas, but I think a lot of people could come up with ideas that can help kickstart that economy once we're ready for it. Certainly in terms of the big hotel chains, airports, airlines, and so on, that heavy lift is going to have to be taken on by government. And I think they're currently looking at opportunities to intervene in that area.
Right. You just mentioned the importance of supporting local, and it's definitely been something that certainly chambers of commerce and others have been promoting for the last year and will continue to. Yet we also know we live in this sort of global interconnected economy. How best do we balance support for local and yet being part of the global economy?
Yeah, I always tread very carefully around that issue. I love where I live, and I love our local merchants and suppliers. and we of course support them very aggressively. And I think that's appropriate. We support farmers markets, all of the above. But we have to be very careful as well that we don't try to create a small protected enclave, because if we do that, we're going to find we lose more than we gain. If if Majestic could only sell toilet tissue in Moncton, it would be a very small market. If Glenwood Kitchens was confined to selling in Shediac, we'd have to lay a lot of people off. That would be a very small market. We all need access to a bigger world. And in turn, we have to give access to a bigger world to us. So we can end up doing important things to support local producers, local products, and we should. But we have to be careful about being protectionist. In fact, we should be the opposite. Canada is at its best when it's the Phoenicia of the world, where it's trading with multiple partners all over the world, taking advantage of the goods that they produce, and in turn, providing the best of what we have to offer. And remember, we just have gone through what I think are 4 pretty dark years of protectionism around Trump in the US and even Brexit in the UK. And those, in my view, have been historical mistakes. If you go back decades with globalization more popular, we've seen dramatic improvements in the lot of humanity. There's been there's been a 50% reduction in child poverty over the last 25 years. There's been a 50% reduction in child mortality rates. There's been a dramatic improvement in numbers joining the middle class and in prosperity. All of these citizens of the world are now buying goods from us. They're enriching all of us. The United States has been enriched by having access to markets of the world, and to say that they're going to close the border down, I think is ultimately destructive. That would be destructive for Canada as well, and be destructive for our own communities here. So I think we should be pushing out, opening up to the world, and being competitive enough and confident enough that we can sell our products to the world. I'm going to say one other thing that I skipped before, talking about supporting local tourism, local, et cetera. We need to promote, and I'll get to that a little bit more, but we need to promote aggressively. We have a lot to offer. And if the tourism sector, if there's anything they need from us, it's the total support of governments in campaigns, sales and marketing around our tourism products, because those of us who spent the last year in New Brunswick, we found treasures that we never even knew existed, and new ones to discover. So we need to promote them very aggressively.
Very good. We've heard a lot, especially over the last, say, 6 months, about phenomena like remote working and how that could be a benefit to New Brunswick. Work from anywhere, but enjoy the quality of life here. Are there strategic opportunities like that for New Brunswick coming out of COVID?
This is such a stunningly good idea. I wish that I'd have thought of it. We always thought there was something there, and we were trying remote pods and different things. But all of a sudden, the pandemic forced this on us, and we wake up and we realize that we live in one of the most blessed places on the planet, where people feel safe and secure, health-wise, but they also have access to a lot of unspoiled wilderness and great beauty in nature. And so it's an amazing opportunity for New Brunswick and for Atlantic Canada to promote itself now as a haven, a place where you can work in the most satisfying jobs on the planet, but work in a place that has an enviable quality of life, perhaps a lower cost of living, but an enviable quality of life. That is where we are at the present time. And we need some tools to make it work, but my gosh, we're sitting in a really, really good spot at the moment. I think we should be promoting the heck out of this. There are other jurisdictions in the world, not as attractive as ours, that are promoting themselves aggressively. This is a chance for us to replenish our population, to reinvigorate our population, to bring new people in, to have more people who are consumers within our communities and more people who are producers. We have at TD now hundreds of people here. They're making very good money and they're working from their homes. We, and just in the last little while, opened up an insurance center in Moncton and said specifically, we want people from northern New Brunswick out of their homes to work there. This can be multiplied dozens of times. So we have a chance not only to bring people in from other places, we have a chance to fill in the cracks and the crevices of New Brunswick, the interstices, the rural communities where it's so hard to place an industry, but where people may be able to work from within their own community. So it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. There's some things I think we have to do. Immigration, we have to make that priority 1, 2, and 3, and not only get them, but keep them. That's on us. Digitization, we've got to be at the top of the game in terms of being the most modern economy around. Connectivity. New Brunswick, we're lucky we started off as a result of the NBTEL days and work the government was doing with NBTEL as the most connected place in all of North America. We need to build on that, make sure every citizen in every community, in every house has high-speed bandwidth. If you do that, you're just bringing jobs into living rooms of people all across the province. So we need to do all of those things. And then we need to promote the heck out of it. We need to, it ain't bragging if you've done it. And I think we've done it in New Brunswick and across Atlantic Canada. And we need to brag about it and promote it and start watching our population grow. I'll just say this, some people fear more people coming in and say, why would we want immigrants? Why would we want more people? Just go to Toronto, go to Vancouver. Those are big, dynamic, growing cities, places that you like to be with a great quality of life. Guess what? They're not smarter than we are. They don't have anything more strategically located than we do. All they are is a receptacle for immigrants, and they have growing populations, and that's just like a magic elixir that creates a great city, and we've missed that because everybody before has all gone off to these other cities. Now, with the Atlantic immigration pilot and the retention rate we have, which is 90%, we have a chance to keep those people here. So we need a little of the secret sauce that has fueled Toronto and Vancouver. That secret sauce are people.
Good, great point. And, not counting 2020, which obviously was a bit of an anomaly, we are starting to see that upward immigration trend, certainly in Greater Moncton. I wanted to ask one Greater Moncton specific question before we started over to the audience questions, Frank. As you heard from David and know from others, the local economy here has been quite resilient through the pandemic. We've still had some good population growth, immigration, record building permits, a really hot real estate market. Where do you think the tri-community should focus as it rebuilds out of the pandemic?
Yeah, so that's interesting. It doesn't surprise me at all that Moncton is doing so well. Moncton is a city with swagger. And when I say Moncton, I'm talking about the greater Moncton area. And it has had it for a long time. I had the pleasure of being a partner in, I guess, the rejuvenation of Moncton after the shops left and so many other storefronts were closed in the downtown. And I was amazed at the positive attitude. And it got all kinds of nicknames from that. I gave them some of them, but others from others. It was called the Moncton Miracle by a number of people. I called it the Timex City, the city that took a licking and kept on ticking. Whatever you wanted to call it, it all had to do with a bit of hubris. People of Moncton weren't prepared to take this lying down, and they rose up. They've always had good civic leadership. When I look at the mayors they've had, including the current mayor and council, and they've worked together always. French, English, Dieppe, Riverview, Moncton have always worked really well together. So it's been a treasure working with them. That in itself is a magic ingredient. So what does Moncton need to go further? I think it needs to keep doing what it's doing, but it should look at a recent survey that was done by a magazine in the US. I think it's called IT Magazine, and it picked out the best places to live in Canada. One of them was Dieppe. In fact, it was at the top of the list, and it talked about what made it one of the greatest places to live. One was connectivity, being able to work because of the connectivity. Another one was the quality of life, and they talked about trails and they talked about green spaces. And we shouldn't forget that, the importance of quality of life. Right now, we've got some extraordinary opportunities. I'm involved, as a lot of other great people, in trying to bring a trail, the shoreline trail, all the way from Alma to Shediac, joining one of our oceans effectively to our other, Northumberland Strait to the Bay of Fundy, English to French, two totally different parts of New Brunswick, all connected together with a high quality trail. There are other trails, one from Calais, Maine to St. John and Miramichi, but these trails, they not only offer quality of life for people who like to run and to jog and do other things, and for bicyclists, but it brings in people who are attracted to these trails from all over the world. The Velo route in the Acadian Peninsula is one of the world's best. I just can't say enough about it. So we need to build more of those people amenities. And again, immigration. Bring people in and make them feel welcome and keep them here once we get them here. And I think if we do all of those things and then promote the heck out of Moncton as it did so well in the past, that Moncton's just going to be on a sharp growth curve for many years to come.
Perhaps, Frank, we can evolve Greater Moncton from being the Timex city to being the Fitbit city, in keeping with
Yeah.
more recent lexicon. There's a question that came in from one of our audience members, Mark, who's the proprietor of an energy retrofit company here in Moncton, and it mirrors one that I had, which is, after the dust settles and government programs are done and we're back to a semi-normal life, how bad will recovery be for governments? I mean, we've seen the federal government dig deep to support people and business, maybe a little bit less so here at the provincial level. They're looking at almost a balanced budget. Just wondering your take on that.
Yep. Well, it's a terrific question. And it's one that kept me awake a lot at night in the early days of the pandemic, when you start hearing numbers like billions and trillions going around. But then you listen to really smart people and you look at the math, and they would tell you that that our economies have enough capacity to absorb those kinds of debt numbers, not to be built into an A base so that they're every year, but on a once in a lifetime basis. And so they talk about the importance of low interest rates. With interest rates as low as we are, the cost of servicing all of this new debt is less than the present debt service costs. So in other words, we are going to have lower debt service after we borrow all of this money than we did before as a result of low interest rates. Now, my answer is you can't count on that forever. But the central banks are saying, yes, but you can for a period of time. And of course, prudent managers will lock in some of those savings over a long-term period of time. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, we should not try to cut our way out of this. We should always be pruning government. But if we cut government badly enough, we destroy demand, which is one of the essential ingredients of a growing economy. And similarly, we shouldn't try to tax our way out of it. If we do that, we end up taking confidence out of the economy and again, destroying some of the growth that we need. So the big element is growth. So instead of taxing, instead of cutting, instead of even holding back, what we need is to create a growth dynamic, because if we grow faster than a 1% rate of interest, then we're effectively reducing the debt. It's almost dissolving away. And that's what's happened with the debt out of the Second World War and future debt episodes. They ended up getting dissolved through the magic of growth, and I guess you could say inflation as well. So what we need is growth. And so my humble view is government should focus all of their attention on growth. And I think they should be smart with the way they spend money. And on that, I think the federal government have done what they needed to do, and they did it quickly. And so there would be some mistakes. I think they need to be careful. Some of these programs become addictive. They're like narcotics. And I think they've made some mistakes in the design of some of the programs. And I would say, be careful. And in the case of the province, I would say that remember what it was like on the old farms. Our wells never produced water until we primed them. You had to put a little water in to get a lot of water out. And if the government of Canada is offering you 80 or 90% dollars, take the dollars. You will generate so much economic activity, you'll more than repair your share. And we need the economic activity. It's not a time to be parsimonious. It's a bit hypocritical of me to say, because I was one of the world's worst skinflints when I was in office. I believe in austerity as a matter of life, but I also believe there are times to spend money smartly. We built the 4-lane highways across this province at a time when we didn't have any money. We begged, borrowed, and stole. We got every dollar that Ottawa had on offer. We finally ended up using the private sector to finish the last piece between Moncton and Fredericton, but we got it done. And I don't think anybody in New Brunswick now would want to go back to the old highways with the horrific accidents that we used to have and the time it would take to travel. So sometimes you've just got to grab the initiative and get stuff done. And in the case of the province, I think that, for example, I had a fight, I think it's behind us now, where we got cross-threaded on the Funday Trail. I wanted the last connector road built and paved so we could take advantage of that whole trail. And the Premier, trying to save money, said, no, we'll give you a gravel road. Well, sometimes, these are false economies, and I think we have to step up and make the investments in order to get the return on investments. And so my wish for Ottawa would be to be a little careful. You don't get too addicted to spending money. And for the province, my wish would be spend money where you can lever it, and growth is more important right now than the frugality.
Right. I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 very quick questions from the audience. Somebody who works in the travel and tourism industry has asked about the build back for the airline industry. And, she makes a great point. Right now it would cost more to fly from Moncton to Vancouver than it would be from Moncton to Europe. Is there a way to restructure the industry so that it benefits our region?
I don't have an answer to that. We've been trying to figure that out for the last several years as a sectoral council on tourism. The fact is that Canada tends to have higher airfares across the country than a place like Europe, which has a lot of discount travelers, and people are traveling much more readily and at much lower prices. We've made it clear that governments have got to think about ways to reduce the cost of air travel. And part of that would be reducing the punitive fees at airports. There was one study done showing that if Toronto could reduce a lot of the airport fees and increase the amount of traffic through it, there'd be over 5,000 people, more people working there as a result of the repatriation of flights from Buffalo, New York, and other places that go there for cheaper flights. So I think we pay close to usurious airport rents across the country, and I think we have to deal with issues like that. But honestly, this is a work in progress. I think all of us involved in the sector know that we've got to get access to airlift at a lower cost, servicing all of Canada, if we're to get the tourism sector back to its vigor.
I wish we had more time because there's a couple of jewels of questions that have just come in. So I'm gonna fire one more your way, Frank, if you don't mind. Someone by the name of Gaetan Thomas, who I know you know, has said that the members of the Conseil économique are saying maybe the province has not done enough so far, and yet they balanced the budget. What should they focus on specifically? And I think you touched on that in one of your last answers about strategic spending.
Yeah, I think we have to be a little careful about talking about balanced budgets. Balanced budgets are good, but if you look at the reasons we balanced the budget, it wasn't particularly because of austerity or taxation. The government of Canada gave us a couple of large windfalls over the last couple of years. And that's good, it's still money. But it doesn't mean that there's not heavy lifting ahead or that cost reductions have to take place on a continuous basis. I just think we, in New Brunswick, the federal revenues represent probably a third of our budget. So they can make you look good or look bad very easily if their budgets are off. And the next couple of years, because of how miserably things are going across the country, we might suffer hundreds of millions of dollars in shortfalls. So, but having said that, I applaud the effort to live within our means. I applaud good management. I think it's right. But we also, even more importantly, or equally important, we have to have growth. We absolutely have to have growth, and growth that outstrips the cost of our debt. And that means that we need to pull all the levers, invest in strategic infrastructure, infrastructure that will be productivity enhancing and increase growth. We need to make sure that we've got the right bridges or the right roads in the right places. We have to make sure we get the right ports. Some work was done on the Port of St. John recently, and look at the results of it. We're seeing dramatic increases in traffic. And so sometimes this priming the pump will lead to greater returns. We also need, I was a big fan of ONB. I thought they did a terrific job promoting New Brunswick, and they brought dozens and dozens of businesses in. And we need to get back to that business attraction. Right now, if we were able to travel, I would say we should be visiting Amazon and Google and Facebook. These companies are putting thousands of jobs in communities all across North America. There are huge growth stories. Shopify in Ottawa. We should be on the radar screen. Starlinks. We should be on the radar screen of all of these companies, trying to make sure they set up here in our communities. We need to make growth a full-time job, full-time focus. And I know a lot of people are working at that. I work with a number of them, but I just repeat what I've said before. We've dug a deep hole. Canada, the world, New Brunswick. We dug a deep hole. It wasn't of our making. It's a pandemic of biblical biblical proportions. The only way out of it is to grow our way out of it. We can't cheap our way out of it, can't tax our way out of it. We have to grow our way out of it. We have to become modern, digital, modern, innovative, hardworking. And if we do that and get enough growth, then we'll look at this as a rich experience in our life, one where we actually transform the province for the best.
Frank, we could go on most of the afternoon, but your time is valuable, and I know the people online have businesses to run and municipalities to govern. So once again, I really want to thank you for joining us today. You continue to be a great friend to the region and the province, and those of us in the business community certainly appreciate all your efforts. So thanks very much for joining us.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thanks very much.